So here we are, the Man to Man podcast. I have no idea what episode. I think we're like almost at 20. Or
I
we're
think
maybe
the last time I
at
counted,
20.
we're at 3,907.
Yeah. So we're starting to rack them up there. We're starting it up. We're trying so hard to get these out weekly for everybody that watches and wants us to. We're trying to give it the effort to get them out weekly. It's tough, right? I mean, like stuff happens and things get busy.
Well, we're just being honest. It's a tough season. Right. It's spring. People are doing a lot of things around the house. I'm doing a lot of things around my house, and so it's just everybody knows that it's just that time of the year in Minnesota where you start doing some things. You start getting out a little bit more cabins and all that kind of stuff.
You finally go outside,
right?
I mean, it doesn't hurt to go.
And this is a long not outside,
right,
man.
I was just talking to Josh, one of the guys from our Year with Men group, and we were talking about I went down to Florida, and he lived in Florida for a while. And I was in Fort Myers Beach, and the destruction on this beach is insane. I mean, like there are whole parts of the beach that are just gone. I mean, there's a place where there's this town square, basically. So It was, shops and restaurants and bars, and then they had this pier that went way out into the ocean. I mean, it was like blocks long, this pier was. It was a massive pier, and people would fish off it and all this stuff, and you could go and get ice cream or pizza, and it was town square, and they would have like music in there and stuff.
Yeah, it's
all gone. The pier is gone. Like the things come up out of the ground
because
of the water, the hurricane that went through last year.
Oh my gosh!
They're all of the buildings, like they were never there. They're just gone.
Wow.
And so, we drove down there, and it's just seeing this destruction is insane. And, I was talking to Josh, and I was like, it's weird because we don't have that kind of weather here.
Right.
The worst it gets in Minnesota is it's really cold, which, for somebody that lives in Florida, they'd be like, hey, listen, you do this every year, right? Like you go outside, you could die. Every winter.
Right.
What happens to us once every 100 years? They say this was like a 100-year storm, is what they kept saying, right? Like it's not been that intense for that long. But it's not. I don't think it's that bad, frankly. Not that many people die in Minnesota, but it is bad. I mean, in a lot of ways, it sucks to go outside, and now it gets nice, and you're like, I got stuff I need to do.
Yeah. Because so knowing in 3.5, 4 months it's going to be
back, right? So this is that time, right? And so here we are.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're trying to get these out, which is great. And we were just kicking around a lot of stuff and trying to discuss a lot of things that happened. And I think that one of the things in our in doing this that we want to do is bring real life stuff to guys to help them, right? I mean, we're trying to model conversation that other guys can have with other guys,
right,
and have it be okay. And that really is what we're trying to do, and bring like not necessarily an answer to it, because I'm always, you said it the other day in class, I'm always like, okay, so what's the answer, right? And sometimes the answer is that you got to talk things out and you have to figure it out, right? And there are things in life where the answer is you have to work through this.
Yeah.
It's not a...
Right, exactly, and many times, and everybody usually knows this, but the reality is that when you have someone that you can talk it out, you sometimes discover the answer yourself.
Right.
If you have somebody just to be a sounding board, and I think so many times we disengage thinking that that's going to be better for us than engaging in a conversation and sharing some stuff that we're confused about. And like I say, many times when you just have that opportunity to share, you get the answer by just communicating it yourself.
Right.
And so the enemy's got an incredible tight-knit band around us as men that really have kept us from having conversations, because he knows what will happen when a band of brothers get together and actually talk real stuff. We'll actually grow.
Right. The idea of, a lot of guys say they're like lone wolfing it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I like to lone wolf it. I hear that all the time. My job, I'll get people that will come in and they'll be like, I'm just really good at lone wolfing it. If you give me a job, I'll get it done. And I'm like, yeah, the lone wolf dies in the end. Like, I don't know if people know this, but
when he's outside the pack,
the wolf succeeds and lives because they're in a pack.
Yeah.
When a wolf is alone, it's because they're sick or too old or hurt. They don't, like, the strong ones are not the lone wolves, but that's how I think guys want to, like when they say that, I like to lone wolf it. They're thinking like this tougher wolf.
Be the man.
Yeah, that's out there by himself because he can make it happen.
Right.
That's not, it's a terrible analogy, really, because the lone wolf dies in the end every time.
Yeah, he dies in the end. And when you look at anything else in the wild kingdom,
right?
When the lions are there, what do? They just walk with the herd until they find the one that's sick or the one that's going to fade back a little bit, and then they attack and kill it.
Right.
So I mean, the moment you get alone, and I could go through multiple different times where I thought being alone. I actually want to do a poem called "When Alone Becomes Your Home." In other words, it's great. It's great when you want to get away once in a while.
Right. Yep.
But when it becomes your home, your mind does some weird things, and I was gonna write this down because I think I got it, and I still will. But being alone is never how God designed us to be, ever.
Right. And so that's what we're trying to do is just show guys like, hey, this is okay. We can do, and we like, this is not just this podcast. Like, this is how we live.
Yes.
Literally how we live life. And I know, John Eldridge, when we do the basics and the Becoming Kings, they say like, hey, this is our lifestyle. We're inviting you to live like this is how we live every day.
Right.
And we want you to like, this is literally how we live every day. We talk almost every day. Right. And if I'm not talking to you, there's a bunch of other guys in our group.
Or somebody else?
Yeah, I have other men I'm seeing too.
Okay, whoa.
But there's there's a whole don't Google man to man. There's a whole like that. This is the life. This is the lifestyle that we literally are walking. It is in conjunction with other people and being able to be real. Frankly, sometimes I'm like, I suck at this, or I don't know that I'm okay with this, right? And what we were talking about it and sort of want to talk about is that guys can take that too far in a lot of ways, and they lose confidence in themselves, and they lose the ability to look at life and go, okay, there are things that I need to do better, and there are things that I need to work on, but there are also some wins in here that I need to remember and to continue to work towards, right? And my question was why? Like, why does that happen? Why do we get that way? Me specifically, why is it that I get to the point sometimes where I'm like, it just doesn't seem like it's like I'm doing it right. Like I think I've said it to you often, right? Like maybe I'm just doing this wrong, right? And one of the things that we came up with after a long conversation, was this verse in Proverbs that I think is really good. Yeah. So why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, Proverbs 29:18 in the New Living Translation says, "When people do not accept divine guidance," and the versions, it's a vision where there is no vision. All right, it says that when people do not accept divine guidance, they run wild. But whoever obeys the law is joyful. And another translation says, where there is no vision, the people cast off restraint.
Right.
It's amazing how when we don't have a set goal or a set vision of where we want to be in 2 years, where we want to be in 3 years, how we can just, like Dr. B says, we can live a life of mediocrity.
Right.
And really we're just going to take each day one day at a time. And you do that, and you will definitely lose confidence because you're not accomplishing anything. You're just getting up, going to work, making money, paying bills. Mm-hmm. And that can be an accomplishment, at some point in time. But if you don't have something you're aspiring to, you're gonna lack confidence.
Right. And I think that it's important to clarify, that there are times when you have to take it one day at a time, right?
Oh, yeah.
We were just just bringing up the Florida thing that we were talking about earlier. Those people had to think about the next day, right? Yeah. Because they're in the middle of a tragedy. So at that point, when you have no water, you have no electricity, your house is tipped over, right? Your neighbor's house is in your living room. Like, you have to think about tomorrow or today, maybe the next hour, right? When you're in the midst of tragedy. But then as you get out of that, they have to start thinking about, how do I rebuild? What happens a year from now? Because if you live in that tragedy or living in the moment mindset for too long, right, then what happens? Yeah. Right? When people don't have any vision of, okay, now we need to rebuild, or what are the next steps we need to take to get us to an end goal, which is to restore back to where we're not, where
Yeah.
our house isn't destroyed, and
Yeah.
we can live here again, and we can prosper again, and we can have our jobs.
Yeah, I mean, like when you don't step out of it, that's where discouragement and depression comes in. I mean, the reality is like, this is where I'm going to live now.
Yeah.
Yep, my house is wrecked. I guess I'm just going to pitch a tent.
Right.
I'll never forget. This was so long ago, Denny. I'll never forget. Remember when the flood at New Orleans happened? Remember that big flood?
Hurricane Katrina. Yeah.
Hurricane Katrina. And I'll never forget watching the news. And they showed hundreds of people, right, amongst all this wreckage, right? Nobody doing anything.
Right.
Except complaining that the government needs to help them. I'll never forget it. People are dying out here of heat stroke. Well, build some cover.
Right. Yeah.
And that was a perfect example of people that just went like, well, somebody else is going to have to fix this because I'm not going to, and I'm just going to sit and wallow in my pain. And you can, but you're going to lack vision. You're going to lack purpose, But then you have the one guy in those tragedies who goes over to his house is messed up, but he decides to go over and help the old lady with hers. That's purpose, right? Because she's older, and so he's more apt to do that. You can always find it in the midst of tragedy. You're right. Yeah, you got to take it one day at a time. What are we going to do next? You got to plot that out. But sooner or later, if you keep moving forward, you're going to go, you know what? We can get a new house now.
Right.
And in the new house, maybe we can add an extra bedroom because you're pregnant and we didn't have the extra bedroom before. You know what I mean? That there's always that sense of purpose and vision that is what keeps us moving forward. And even when in the difficulties, as long as you have something that you can aspire to, you're going to be able to succeed in a much not easier way, but success will come.
Right.
Different time frames, but it will come.
Sure. And so, for guys that like we were talking about that get into this mindset, right, of lacking confidence because they're not seeing they're living in that day-to-day mindset, right? So, I mean, what are the steps? What are the first things that they need to do to change that mindset and to, like, are you saying just, hey, maybe you need to think 2 years out and be,
yes, that's what
where do I want to be 2 years from now?
Yeah, that's what you want to do. That's exactly what you want to do. You want to sit down and you want to, like I say, Jordan Peterson, I don't know if people watch him, but he actually has something on his website that you can go through that actually has you do those things. You sit down, he asks you, he goes, what do you want to be? I want to be a pilot. Okay. If you want to become a pilot, okay. So then it takes you to the process of what's the first step? Well, maybe you should figure out how to get a license.
Right.
What's it going to take? Well, it's going to take 12 classes. Okay. 12 classes where? But you sit down and he goes, you got to be realistic. I mean, if you sit down and go, I want a 15-house mansion on a beach in, the Bahamas. Well, okay, great. You might get there. Right. But literally, you got to do that and then stick to it. Because for a fact, as soon as you start to write down a vision and a purpose for your life, the enemy's going to come in and try to be like, you can't do it.
Right.
You don't make enough money. You don't have a good enough career. I mean, he's going to do that. Of course he's going to come in like a flood and do that to you. But that's really the first part of, like I told you earlier, Carrie and me have just kind of stepped into a new purpose when it comes to coaching. Me coaching men and her coaching, business owners or Chick-fil-A, owner operators. And we're starting to intermingle of how we could probably work together with those people. How she could work together when it comes to me coaching men in life. She could probably bring the business side. And how the people that she's coaching in business, I could kind of bring the real and the family side or whatever. And just that thought together alone, I'm just like, okay, what are we going to do next? What can we do next?
So then you can start to plan out the purpose for that, right? And being intentional of actually, I mean, I think the reality is that you really have to sit down and make a plan.
Yes.
I think a lot of times we get stuck on that. Yeah. A lot of guys are stuck right there. Like, yeah, I know, I got to sit down and do that. Yeah. No, you do. Literally have to sit down and write this out, because if you don't, right, then you're just stuck. You're stuck in step one. Right. You're stuck in step zero. I mean, we talk about the compass class thing where Dr. B is like a step zero, right? Like that's where you're stuck at step zero. You're not even on the path yet. Yeah. And one of the things in one of the other classes that I'm taking, I take other classes too. There's a lot of stuff being revealed in this podcast. I get in trouble. No, but this other class I'm taking, they had us write a eulogy. That's tough.
That's one of the most difficult things to do is a eulogy.
Yeah, that is hard. And they wanted you to write it based on how you want the person to read your eulogy when you die, not how they would now.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So that's hard, but it also is a plan. That's a vision for the future. That's where I want to be. And the next step in this class is, okay, now come up with a plan as to how you get there. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't just like this emotional, I mean, it starts with that, right? Like this emotional thing of writing this eulogy. But then the idea is, okay, now how do you get there? Make that happen. Yeah. How? And so, starting was the first step. And they did it with this ease and write a eulogy. That would be one way guys can start. Sit down and go, I did it from the viewpoint of my son, right? What do I want my son to get up and say when I die? Because I didn't end up going to. And so what do I want him to say? And now I have to write out a plan as to how I get to there. And
one of the because especially in Christianity, it's like, well, I want God's plan for my life. I'm glad.
Yeah.
That's
which is good.
That's great. You can have God's plan, and I'm going to wait until, I hear from Him. And well, if you're 35 years old and you still don't have a plan, my guess is God wants you to develop something. But one of the things that I always suggest to men is like, okay, what brings joy? What brings joy to your life?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great place to start.
Right.
And I mean, really, I don't care what it is from, joy to me would be becoming a guide for fishing in the Atlantic Ocean. Okay. So what brings joy? Because joy is a very key emotion. And it's not, we can get into the whole, joy is not an emotion, it's not a feeling, but whatever, we won't go there. So just sit back and just push yourself away from all the stuff and what you can't do because of whatever reason you can't. And I always say, what makes you smile?
Yeah, that's a good place to start for sure.
What makes you smile? And, when it comes to Dr. B, I was just going to try to find it on my phone, but I won't. But one of the things that he has you write out is a biblical mandate and a personal mandate and an ultimate contribution. That is vision casting. Mm-hmm. My ultimate contribution, that is what I want said. Right. When I'm gone.
And actually we posted that on our website. Yeah. So people go to mantoman.org, they can go to the About page, and there's a link in there that shows all of those things. Like you literally wrote them out. I mean, I read it, and obviously when I posted it, I mean, it's a lot of thought and work that went into that, but literally, again, first step was sitting down to write that out and starting to do that. But that gives you something to bounce things off of. Right. Now, again, you could have a plan again to be a guide, whatever you said, salmon fishing guide or whatever in the Atlantic Ocean. You could have this plan. And, who knows if you get there, frankly. I mean, you don't always arrive at every goal, right? But along the way, if you're doing things that you're enjoying and that are getting you towards that end or moving you towards that end, then, you're still living in that plan for your own life. Yes. You have a purpose that you're living in, and maybe along the way your purpose changes. And, you meet the girl and she doesn't want to be an Atlantic fisherman, and you go like, okay, I like this girl more than I like fishing, so I'm going to switch my plan up a little bit here, right?
You're just fishing for girl.
Yeah, or happiness, and things like that. So, I mean, life changes, right? I mean, I have 2 sons now, and most of my life revolves around them. That wasn't my plan. I could have never known that at 22. Right. If I would have written out my plan at 25, if I would have written out my plan at 30, if I would have written out my plan, right. Even though I had them at 30, you still don't know that, boy, at some point your life is going to revolve around their lives. Yeah. Literally, and that's because you only have, there's this statistic that I read a while back that just blew my mind and really, like, it made me sad in a lot of ways because of the age of my boys. But it says that by the age of 12, your kids, you will have spent 80% of the one-on-one time that you will have in their whole life by the age of 12. because that's where they start to get independent
Mm-hmm.
and progressively become more and more independent every year.
And it's getting younger every year.
Yeah.
It's getting younger because it was 15 and 16 back when my kids were that age.
So yeah, so at 12, I had spent 8. So my kids are past that already.
Yeah.
So 80% of the one-on-one time that I will ever have with them is gone.
Yeah.
And so in some ways that depresses me, but in other ways, it just shows you how, your life changes, and you don't understand that this is an important thing that you have to put time and effort into. And, and again, in another 4 years when they're both out of the house, maybe I go back to wanting to be an Atlantic, salmon fisherman or whatever, and that's not my dream, but if it were, right, maybe that's the case. Point being, if you have that purpose, if you just give up, how many guys just give up on that, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm never going to be that because now I have these kids and my life revolves around them, and so I guess I'm just going to live it one day at a time.
Yeah.
And that's
What's
the
that
slow
saying?
march to death.
I hate
right?
it. You know it because we said
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
I catch myself saying that.
I can't stand that. It is what you make it. It's not is what it is. It is what you make it. And when you think about a vision, and when you think about the Bible, I mean, God tells Noah to build a boat. Never rained before.
Right.
You want me to build a what? Right? But he gave him a vision and a purpose, and he's like, okay, I'll do it. And he built the boat. And then, of course, obviously, we know the rest of the story. When you look at Abraham, you're going to be a father of,
right.
My wife's like 100. How's that going to be possible?
Right.
I mean, but what? There's something about having that set before you that, despite now when Abraham, he decided to take on some of it himself, right, to try to make it happen, right. But when you think about the way God's design is, that's what He knows, especially in us men, that's going to keep us moving forward. Is this ability to go, I'm going to get there, one way or another, and that challenge and that reality is what actually stirs us up to get out of depression now, because we're accomplishing something. If we're not accomplishing something, any guy that if you set a task before him,
right, and
he actually tries to do it, by the time they're done, they're automatically more confident in who they are.
Right.
Automatically.
Right.
I don't care what it is. Even a chess game.
Yeah.
I've never played chess before. Yeah, and the reason I'm saying that because that happened at Olaf's sons like to play chess, whatever, and at the last basic I did, and it's like, I've never played chess before, and I'm like, I'm not going to play, and I'm so mad that I didn't. I didn't. Right? They're like, come on, just play, and I'm like, no, I'm going to get burned. But now the next time we get together, I'm going to play a game of chess. Why? Because I missed that opportunity to take on a challenge, even though I'm bad at it. Right? But who knows? I could win, maybe. No.
If you don't play chess, you're not going to win.
But that's the importance of having a vision. That's the importance of having a purpose. And you're right. Not every vision you start out to do comes to fruition, right? There may be changes and different. Like you said, you may meet a spouse. You may have a child. You may have a job change. Whatever the case may be.
You might figure out you don't like fishing.
All right.
I mean, you might wake up one day and be like, "Yeah, I'm done with this."
No, Slade. I think you know Slade. Yeah, I don't know if you saw his post, but he's going on a fishing boat for like 30 days.
That's
like
crazy.
One that those go out for 30 days things. He's going to try that because he thought that. That's why I brought it up to fishing, because he's like, he goes, I don't know, I may want to be this, so I'm going to go do it. So I guess there's this thing that you can go out actually on a real boat for 30 days, live off the boat like those shows that we see, and he's doing it.
That's cool.
Good
for him.
I know. That's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not going to do that.
No, I'm definitely not.
I mean,
but it's cool that he is.
I'd probably drown because I'd look up and a raindrop would fall in my mouth and I'd try to drown. But yeah, so that's what, and obviously the enemy is just trying to say, you just need to make it through the day. You just need to make it through tomorrow. You just need to, and he's going to be constantly doing that because he knows that men with vision and purpose, they're going to change the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just the truth. I mean, if Morgan can say a man and a knife will change the world, imagine with a man and a knife with a vision and a purpose,
That's the point of that exactly, though, is that a man feels like he has a purpose.
Exactly.
The point of the man and a knife can change the world is that you feel like I have the tools to carry out my purpose.
Yeah.
And it's, it is funny how even those little things, I feel like I go through these times. I mean, we just had it, right, where I was talking to you, and I'm like, I feel like I'm just missing the boat.
Yeah.
And I go through this, and as I'm talking that out, and as I'm expressing that to you, you've commented about it, where I'm catching myself, like, yeah, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, I know this is what I'm supposed to do, and I feel like, but it's not working. The point is, I still know what I'm supposed to do.
That's so good.
And so after I get all that out, and I hear myself say those things, and and obviously having that mirror of you being like, you hear what you're saying, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah, you know what you're supposed to do. That's the point.
Right.
That is because I have that vision, because I have the end goal, right? And so it doesn't last long. It's the 10-minute rant on Marco Polo, and then afterwards the next day I'm like, I feel okay actually, because there are some things in there that even I said where I'm like, yeah, give yourself some credit, bud.
Right.
And the conversation we had with Sean last night, where he was so down on himself, and I'm like, dude, give yourself some credit. Like, your failure here was a lot of guys' success.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people would. I understand that he wants to hold himself to a higher standard, which is totally cool. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And that will continue to push him forward, because his goal for himself is further out there.
Right. Exactly.
But your goal is out here. A lot of people's goal is back here, and that's where you hit. Right. Like, you had success. Yeah. It's just not quite where you want to be, which is fine. But you didn't fail. No. Like, you found success in that, just not the end. You're not at the end goal yet, which in some ways can be encouraging, because when you reach that end goal, then you got to start over again. And now where do I go?
Right. And the biggest thing, and the biggest thing with that is that so many guys, when they mess up or when they do something wrong, they fall right to failure instead of it was a mistake.
Right. Or a stumble, right? Like,
exactly.
Fail. You kind of tripped a little bit.
Really. Yeah, well, just, no, I mean, just go to like pornography. Okay, we'll just say that, pornography. Okay, you haven't watched pornography in 6 months and you watched it the other day. Right. I'm a failure. I thought I was over that. I thought I didn't have that problem. You don't. You messed up. That's called a mistake. It's not a failure. That's a mistake. But so often the enemy wants to call you a failure. Why? Right. Because if he can get you in that spot, then it doesn't matter what you do. You're going to be you're taking ownership that I am a failure. No, you're a man of God who made a mistake. Repent, move forward, and go another 6 months. Right. Now, if you're watching it 5 times a week, yeah, you're failing. I'm sorry, but you need to get your heart checked and realign with God.
Right.
But yeah, and then obviously the more that you feel in failure, the more your identity becomes I am a failure.
You're labeled.
I am
you're labeling.
No good. I am whatever, and so now you're taking ownership of this identity that's not who you are.
Right.
And so that's why I say, but I'm telling you, any guy that you put a challenge in front of them and then they take the challenge, they always come out the other side feeling stronger as a man. And that's why you need to have there's even, I heard a marriage statement saying that women don't need to marry a man, don't need to submit to a man that doesn't have a submission. Why would you want to submit to a man that doesn't have a mission in life?
Sure.
Which I thought was a really cool statement, right?
Is.
I mean, so if you're out there and you're married and you're playing PlayStation every day, and you might want to, and you wonder why your wife and you don't get along, you might want to get a mission,
right?
Instead of trying to get to the next level of years of war,
right? Yeah.
So
that's good. That's really good. So I mean, I think we can conclude on, or we can end this one on, let's give people a challenge, right? Like, we've got a basic coming up in August.
Yeah.
If guys haven't been to a basic, or if they haven't been to a basic, go.
Yeah.
Sign up, go to the website, sign up, go to basic. That will challenge you.
Yeah.
I believe that no man will go to that and not be challenged in some way.
You haven't seen it yet.
Right. So that will challenge you, and it will help to start to establish a vision for your life and for the next few years, because like, you will get something out of there that you will come back and go, okay, I want to work on this. I want to work on this.
That's so key. Yeah.
So If you've never been to basic, go to a basic. If you've been to a basic, you know 2 or 3 people right now that are jumping into their heads that they're going, this person needs this. So get them there. Find a way. If you got to go again to get them to go, then go again and get them to go. Or if you can talk them into going and you don't want to go because you've already been, then talk them into going. But make the effort to get people to basic. That's a challenge that people can take on, and that is short term, but it gives them some place to start.
That's a challenge, and that's a vision.
Right.
I'm going to bring 4 people.
Right.
That's a purpose. That's a vision. I mean, that can be a vision for every guy out there that's been to basic, knowing the effect, knowing how it affected you. I mean, we just talked in the Compass about, discipleship, and what is it? It's walking through your daily life, teaching other men what you've been taught. That's what it is. Well, reach out to some guys and help them to teach what you've been taught, or get taught what you've been taught.
I don't think that's right.
But you understand.
It doesn't seem like English. Yeah. My son said to me the other day, and I think I said this. I don't know whether I did say it in class the other day, but he was upset he's working on his car, so he was fighting this car. I was trying to help, but I'm dad, so I'm not really all that much help in that moment. And so anyways, we started at, and he said to me, he goes, Dad, I don't know if you know this, but I watch you and I learn from you. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, I hope that that's the case. And he goes, no, like the things that you do, I'm learning from whether you want me to or not.
And so really,
and I was like,
so where does your brain go right when you say that?
Like, what did I do bad?
Yeah, that's exactly where my brain goes immediately.
Yeah.
What
did I do bad? No, that's perfect.
That's immediately where if my son would ask me, like, oh crap, what did I say?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, what did I do bad?
Yeah.
But that just tells you, I mean, that's discipleship.
Yeah.
Like, that is literally discipleship, is even when you're not intending for me to be learning from you, I'm learning from you. And that's your brain immediately goes to what bad to do. You better clear that stuff up, because whether you want to or not, they're learning from you.
Well, and once again, the reason I said that was because we have a tendency to think of ourselves that way, that's what we can only contribute.
Right.
When there's a lot of great things that we've contributed also. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But it's so interesting on how the majority of men that sons would say that are going like, what did I do? Right. I'd love to be able to go, gosh, I wonder what I did that caused him to think, think of a good thing, I mean, that'd be interesting. I'll never forget when, I know we're trying to close down here, but I'll never forget when I was driving the minivan. Yeah, I had one.
The man van.
I had a minivan. And my daughter Jackie and my daughter Constance were in the car, and I had to hit the brakes quick. Uh-huh. And Constance didn't have her seatbelt on, so she kind of flew and hit the driver's seat and hit her nose and started crying. And my daughter goes, "That's what you get for not wearing your seatbelt." And I turned around and looked at her, I'm like, that was horribly mean. She goes, "Well, that's what you said to me the other day."
Yikes. Right?
Yep. Okay, there was one of those learning experiences. I'm learning from you. Oh, yeah. She didn't care about Constance being hurt. She just, and then that was a bad one. But there's other good ones that we could go through too. But yeah, you're right. It's your daily walk. It's your job. It's you getting at work. People do.
Right.
Watch.
All right. Well, I think we close with that.
Good to go.
Good.